Hello everybody. So this video was supposed to come to you 2 weeks ago, but as I said in my office ranking video, the audio got really messed up on that video, so here we are 2 weeks later. You're finally getting this video, so better late than never, I guess. Also, you may have noticed that I'm wearing a red shirt that I wore in last week's video for ranking the top 10 office couples for Valentine's Day, and that's because we're talking about the third season or book of Avatar The Last Airbender, Fire. I'm gonna try to add some fire effect there. If I can't, then I just did this for no reason, but hopefully that looked cool. If not, then, well, this is awkward, isn't it? Anyway, though, let's just get into the video. It's been 2 weeks since I was supposed to post the video, like I just said, so let's get into it, talking about the third and final season of Avatar The Last Airbender. Let's do this thing. Okay, so to start out, because there's a lot that I want to talk about in this season, I'm just gonna say, just kind of do like a lightning round, just kind of mention some things that I just want to mention from the season and not go too much in detail, because again, there's a lot I want to get into with this, so I'm just gonna do kind of a lightning round here. So first off, start of the season, Aang has hair now. Weird to see. I'm glad he eventually shaved it off, but it took some getting used to. I eventually did, but again, weird to see Aang with hair since he's been bald this whole time. Also, on a more serious note, seeing Aang framed similar to how Zuko is framed when he's talking about getting his honor back, that was very cool and kind of scary to see Aang like that. And of course, they even fade to, the very next scene, they fade to Zuko in a similar frames in a similar way, I think just on the opposite side of the frame. So I thought that was a very cool detail that they had there, framing Aang very similar to Zuko. The jokes about Toph being blind, I should have mentioned that in my Avatar Season 2 video, but those are great. Like, just, every single time, it got me, the jokes. Like, I don't know how, but every single time they made a joke about Toph being blind, I laughed out loud. Because I think it's because Toph, the way Toph's character is set up is you kind of forget that she is blind, so, because she uses earthbending to see. So she does things that make you kind of forget that she's blind, which I think helps to make it so every single time they make a joke about her being blind, it worked. In the episode before the solar eclipse, we have Aang being very nervous, having nightmares and daydreams, which I thought were very hilarious, especially the daydream where he kisses Katara, and then the one where Appa and Momo start to talk, and then they have a battle. Like, that was such a hilarious scene. I just very much enjoyed that. That was extremely hilarious. Sokka gets a master. Thought that was very cool, because we've seen everybody else, they've had a master. They, everybody else has bending. Aang has airbending, waterbending, and earthbending at this point. Katara has waterbending, Toph has earthbending, and Sokka's kind of like, what does he have? I mean, he doesn't have a master, he can't bend. So I thought that was cool to have, to give him a master, to teach him sword fighting, and he actually makes a sword out of the meteorite. So I thought that was a very cool thing that they did there. And then bloodbending. We get introduced to bloodbending this season. Very interesting. It's the subset of waterbending, which I think is very cool that, like, each of the elements has, like, a subset to them. Like, firebending has lightning bending, and earthbending has metal bending, which I forgot to mention in the Season 2 video. Toph invented that in the final episode, so that's cool. So, metal bending for earthbending, and then for waterbending, we have bloodbending. I don't think there's anything for airbending, but waterbending, we find out that there's such thing as bloodbending, which the terrible old lady Hama came up with, and she tries to teach Katara. it to pass on her wisdom. Katara obviously is like, I don't want any part of that. She gets forced to do so. So now Katara is the only bloodbender in the world, I guess besides Hama, but Hama's locked up. So that's interesting. By the way, I've seen Legend of Korra the first 2 seasons at this point, so bloodbending in season 1, kind of a big deal. So I like, not to get too much into Legend of Korra in this video, but I like that bloodbending, wasn't just this, one instance in this one episode. It comes back later, because I think that's a very interesting concept of being able to control somebody's body. Obviously, it's very weird to think about, just both doing it and, having it done to you. Very creepy, very weird, but it's an interesting concept, and I'm glad that they introduced it in this season. And to finish off this, well, at this point, I don't know if it's really a lightning round anymore, but to finish off this lightning round, I want to talk about an episode called The Avatar and the Fire Lord. I think that this is one of the greatest episodes of this season and of the whole series, because it does a good job at showing the backstory to all of this. We find out that the Avatar before Aang, Roku, was best friends with the Fire Lord Sozin, who basically created, he basically caused the 100-year war that's been going on. So I thought that was very interesting. We kind of see how, their friendship kind of breaking apart is sort of what caused the war. It's because that, Roku finds out that he's the Avatar, he has to leave, and because he leaves, that is what kind of makes Sozin, it makes it so Sozin, doesn't have Roku by his side anymore, so he starts going down a bad path towards, what we've been hearing in every single episode. Everything changed when the Fire Nation attacked, and he's going down this road leading towards using the comet. Who's the comet? The Sozin's comet is named after him. Using the comet to amplify all of the Fire Nation's powers and take over the air nation, and starts this 100-year war. So I thought that was very interesting. We see kind of, because Roku in the beginning of the season says that Aang is having to fix his mistake, and we see exactly what Roku meant by that. It's because, he had to go out and, be the Avatar, so he didn't do as much as he could to stop Sozin, and that's why this whole war is happening. Some other interesting stuff in this episode, we see that Roku was friends with Monkey Yatso, which was Aang's mentor. So that was a cool detail that we see kind of this thing of some friendships are longer than one lifetime. So just like, Roku and Monkey Yatsu were best friends, so in Roku's next life, Aang and Monkey Yatso are best friends. We find out that Roku had a hard time learning earthbending. That was a particularly difficult one for him to learn, and that makes sense because he's Fire Nation, which is the opposite of Water Nation. So, it makes sense that water bending would be the one that would be most challenging for him as a firebender. And it's very similar to how earthbending was the hardest one for Aang, because he's an airbender, and earth and air are separate on the spectrum. So I thought that was a very interesting detail I threw in there, how, it seems like each avatar has one element that's particularly hard for them to learn. Going back to Legend of Korra, I'm sorry I keep going back to that, but Korra, obviously the whole thing with the first season is she's learning airbending, and that's hard for her to do, so, because that's the one that's kind of most opposite to her personality. So I thought that was cool, that just, it seems like each avatar has one element that's hard for them to do, hard for them to learn, so that's pretty cool. And finally, last thing that I want to mention about this episode that we find out that's a big revelation is that Zuko is not only the great-grandson of Sozin, but he's also the great-grandson of Avatar Roku. Sozin is on his father's side, but on his mother's side is Avatar Roku. So he is the convergence of Fire Lord Sozin and Avatar Roku, which I think just makes it so perfect that in the end of this series, he becomes the Fire Lord. It's very poetic, the great-grandson of both Fire Lord Sozin and Avatar Roku. Pretty much what caused the war was their friendship breaking apart. And he's the one who fixes it. Or he takes a big part in fixing it. So, in ending the war, and again, I think it's pretty poetic that that's how it worked out. So, speaking of Zuko, because there's, that I've been really enjoying Zuko's character for this entire series, so let's talk about Zuko this season. So, if you've seen my Season 2 video, I was very, very disappointed to see that Zuko turned back to evil in the final episode. He looked like he was finally getting his redemptive arc, he was finally gonna be good, and then he goes back and he turns bad and he throws everything away just to go back to the Fire Nation. So, that's where we're at now. So, he gets accepted back to the Fire Nation, but it's not everything that he thought it was. It's not everything that he imagined it would be. It's not the same as he remembers it. He has sort of an identity crisis. This thing that he's wanted for the past few years of, he got banished, and he's been trying this whole time to catch the Avatar and, regain his honor and go back to the Fire Nation. And now that he's finally gotten it, he's like, this isn't right. This isn't, how I thought it would feel. And he's realizing that, he's went through this change, from being away from the Fire Nation. He's seen how the rest of the world reacts to the Fire Nation, and that's given him a new view of it. And he's now using that new knowledge to look at the Fire Nation and realize we're the bad guys. The Fire Nation are the bad guys. And that's what leads him in the solar eclipse episode to confront his father, saying, I'm gonna go leave, I'm gonna go find the Avatar, I'm gonna teach him firebending, and I'm gonna make sure he takes you down, ends this whole war, because this is just terrible. The Fire Nation is terrible. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. I'm leaving. And you have no idea how happy this scene made me to finally see Zuko redeemed, to finally see he is good. He finally chooses good. I thought he had done it. That's why I was so, annoyed by the ending of last season, because I thought he had finally done it, but he just goes back, and it made me really pissed off and annoyed. But in this episode, the solar eclipse, he chooses good, and that's where he's at for the rest of the season. That was great. So, he leaves, he finds Aang, he basically is like, hey, I'm good now. But we kinda tried to kill them for the entire first season, so they're not exactly too quick to, let them join in. They're kinda like, I don't know, is this a trick? Which I think it's hilarious and frustrating at the same time. It's frustrating because, we know that Zuko is good, and, because we've seen, everything that's happened, but they haven't, so from their perspective, this is the guy that just a little while ago was trying to kill them, and now he's coming here like, oh, I'm good now. They're gonna obviously be iffy about that, but we know that he's good, so it's so frustrating, because we want them to, we want them to know what we know, but we know that they don't know that. That was very confusing. I know that, but I hope you get what I'm saying. Yeah, so on that side, it's frustrating, but it's also hilarious because of just how badly Zuko is failing at trying to convince them, saying things like he hired the assassin to kill them. Like, maybe don't say things like that when you're trying to get them on your side. So it's hilarious in that side. Also when he's doing, impressions of Uncle Iroh and Azula to try to, help him figure out how to get them on his side, how to convince them that he's good now. I thought those were very hilarious when he was doing impressions of them. But of course, it all works out. He convinces them by saving their lives, and he teaches Aang firebending, which I had predicted, by the way, from the very beginning that this would happen, so, just pat myself on the back for that one. However, even once he does get everybody on his side, Katara still is a bit iffy about him, and she tells him this. She tells him that, if he makes one wrong move, she's gonna take him out because, she's the one who saw firsthand what happened last season. She saw him turning good, and then she saw him going back to evil, and so, she's the one out of all of them that knows that once Zuko, when he says that he's good, that's not always a sure thing, so, it makes sense that she's gonna be the one who's a bit skeptical of this. Of course, it all gets resolved when Zuko helps her go find the guy who killed her mother, and she uses bloodbending on the first guy who isn't actually the guy who killed her mother. So, not very great that she used bloodbending again because, kind of not a great thing to do. So I'm happy that that's the only instance that she ever uses bloodbending in this season because I just don't want to see Katara bloodbend anybody. So, but yeah, she bloodbends and then she goes and she finds the guy who killed her mother and she's about to get revenge on him, but she stops and remembers something that Aang told her, that violence is never the answer, revenge is never the answer, and so she stops. She doesn't kill him, and she just lets it go. And she trusts Zuko now at this point. And then, in this episode, it ends with a very interesting piece of dialogue. Zuko says, Aang, you're right. Violence is never the answer. But what are you going to do when you face my father? This is something that I hadn't thought about until this point. And you can tell Aang hadn't thought about it either. Like, violence is never the answer. But isn't that the exact thing that he's training to do? Isn't he, going to... Is the plan to kill Fire Lord Ozai before the comet comes? So you see that they're setting up something here. You're not sure what it is at this point. You're not sure what they're getting at completely. But you can tell they're setting up something. They're setting up the finale. Now, before I enter the finale, I just want to quickly talk about the episode The Boiling Rock. We get Zuko and Mei reunited. I just want to say they are an amazing couple. They're really weird, but also heartwarming at the same time. Great couple. And so, Zuko, he had to, he left the Fire Nation, and in leaving the Fire Nation, he had to leave Mei behind when he went off to go with Aang. So, Mei's not very happy about that, and she confronts him when he gets trapped in the boiling rock. But she eventually decides that working with Azula isn't great. She decides to help Zuko escape, and she turns on Azula, which, epic moment there. I love to see that. And then we see Ty Lee turns on Azula. Amazing to see that also. But then they get captured and put in the Boiling Rock prison, not to be seen again until the end of the series, which I'll get to later. And then, of course, in this episode, Sokka and Suki are reunited. We finally find out where is Suki. So, that was great. Nice to see them reunited. Nice to see them together again. Good job. I don't know if I'm saying good job to. Good job to the people who wrote Avatar, I guess. Alright, the finale. So, we start out, we find out, Aang is deciding to wait, to not try to go up against Fire Lord Ozai before the comet comes. He decides he's gonna wait till after the comet, so, he's not trying to go up against Ozai on his, 1,000% power. But then we find out some information from Zuko, who was in a meeting earlier in the season where he found out that Ozai, his father, is going to use the comet to take over the entire Earth nation and become the supreme ruler of the entire world. So, that adds a lot of urgency to this whole situation, and Aang realizes that he's really on a tight clock now, tight countdown to, to save the world. So, then we get kind of a follow-up to the piece of dialogue that I mentioned earlier about, violence is never the answer, but what is Aang gonna do when he goes up against Fire Lord Ozai? So, the plan, everybody else is telling him, you're gonna go up against Ozai, you're gonna kill him. And he's like, yeah, but violence is not the answer. Like, it's not something I could do. And he's struggling with that idea. And so, with the idea of killing somebody, even, somebody as bad as Fire Lord Ozai, he just can't wrap his mind around, actually doing that. It just doesn't feel right to him, and he ends up going somewhere, disappearing to talk to the other avatars before him, and they're all telling him, you gotta do what you gotta do. You may have to kill him. Sometimes you gotta, to save the world, you're gonna have to, you may have to kill him. That's just kind of how this is gonna work. And just, again and again, Aang is like, he can't do this. He can't, it's not something he's capable of doing. We'll put a pin on that for now, and come back to it a little bit later, but now I want to talk about the White Lotus. You find out that a bunch of people from throughout the series that we've seen, a lot of, older characters, are part of this secret society called the White Lotus. We kind of were introduced to that in Season 2, but we find out a lot of these characters, along with Uncle Iroh, are in the White Lotus. They help Zuko and Sokka and Katara and Toph. They bring them to their base, where Zuko is reunited with Uncle Iroh in one of the most emotional and greatest scenes of the entire series. I just love this scene so much. Like, just, because Zuko, at the start of it, he's nervous that, Uncle Iroh's going to be mad at him because he turned on him, but of course he isn't. Of course he's just happy to see that Zuko has finally chosen good, that he's finally, and that he did it on his own. That it wasn't, Uncle Iroh leading him towards the path to do it, that he did it all on his own, deciding to become good, deciding to throw away the whole Fire Nation thing, and I just love that so much. I just love that, their reunion, one of the best scenes of the entire series. It just hits every single mark that I needed to do. I love it so much. And then Zuko and Katara go off to the Fire Nation to go up against Azula, who is now the new Fire Lord, because Ozai is out trying to become the supreme leader of the world, so he's left Azula to be Fire Lord, who is kind of having a mental breakdown over this, firing a bunch of people, all the messy hair, kind of acting crazy. She's not doing too well, and so they get there. Zuko's, the whole plan is Zuko is going to defeat Azula, and he's going to be the Fire Lord. Like I mentioned before, very poetic, because he's the convergence, he's the grandson of both Fire Lord Sozin and Avatar Roku, so it's his destiny to defeat Azula and become the next Fire Lord. So they get there, Zuko and Azula fight. Gotta say, very great battle, one of my favorites of the series, very epic. And then you get to a point where Azula goes to shoot lightning, and she aims at Katara. And Zuko it's all in slow motion. Zuko runs over and jumps in front of her to take on the full force of the lightning, and that was such a great moment, but also such a sad moment, because I was like, are they gonna kill Zuko? Because I would have been so mad if they killed Zuko in this moment, and I honestly was starting to think that they were gonna go there. I'm glad they did not. I'm so glad that they did not. That he survives. That Katara, after fighting Azula, I gotta say, Katara versus Azula, another one of the greatest battles of the series. But so Katara beats Azula, heals Zuko, mostly. And now I want to go back to that pin and talk about Aang. So, we get to see the battle between Aang and Fire Lord Ozai, or soon-to-be Supreme Leader Ozai. As I expected, it was epic. It was so epic to see Aang using all 4 elements to save the world, going up against Ozai. Just so amazing. It was everything that I thought it would be. It was great. And then you get to this point where Aang gets struck in the back again, which for some reason reignites the Avatar state, allows him to go back into it, because he hadn't been able to for the season so far, which is something that I had predicted might happen, because he was struck by lightning in the Avatar state. So I was thinking that he wasn't going to be able to go into it this season, which I was right. He wasn't able to until this moment for some reason. I don't completely understand why this happened. Maybe if you know, you can comment below why. But this was kind of a weird moment. But whatever, it was still cool. I'm not like that, like. Like, it was a really cool moment, so I can kind of overlook, if it's, not completely logical. I mean, it's always cool to see Aang, full power in the Avatar state, so I'm not really complaining. It's still extremely epic to see Aang in the Avatar state just completely going after Ozai, just completely just throwing everything at him. It was cool. It's just, I'm not sure how it all worked there. So anyway, we get to a point where Aang is about to kill Ozai, and he comes out of the Avatar state. He can't do it. He's just like, he can't kill him. He's going with his gut. It's like, violence is not the answer. He can't kill him. And then the show surprised me, honestly. Like, I'm completely honest with you. I did not expect them to do what they do next. And I'm surprised that I didn't. Because what happens next? Ozai runs up to Aang. Aang, traps him in Earth. And then he puts his hands on his forehead. And then this crazy light show happens. And when it's all over, Ozai can't firebend anymore. Aang took away Ozai's firebending. I mean, that is so much more epic than Aang killing him. Like, that's like taking away his bending. Like, that's something that didn't even seem possible. That's so cool that that's the route that they went to, not killing him. Instead, doing sort of the next best thing, taking away his bending, taking away his ability to be a threat. I mean, that was a really great moment. A really epic moment. Aang takes away Ozai's bending, and now the war is over, and we get the epilogue. Zuko and Mai get back together. Zuko is crowned the new Fire Lord. Ty Lee joins the Kyoshi Warriors. Aang and Katara finally kiss, finally get together, but the most important thing is Uncle Iroh gets his tea shop. I'm so happy for him. He finally got his tea shop. That's all he's ever wanted the entire series. He gets his tea shop. And so, with that, the show is over. And I have to say, I just want to give some final thoughts on the entire show and have to say I really enjoyed it. I really did. It was, you know, I'm kind of sad that I didn't, watch it growing up, but at the same time I'm glad that I waited till now so I could really understand, all the complexity of it. So I could really see like, how it's a redemptive story. It's really about the redemption of Aang and Zuko. Aang being redeemed for, running away from what his destiny is. Being the Avatar and saving the world, stopping this 100-year war, and instead he went into hiding. He went into the Ball of Ice for 100 years and let this war go on for longer than it should have. And he gets redeemed. It's also kind of redeeming Avatar Roku, but I guess the Avatar is like the same life, so it's redeeming the Avatar. So, so I guess it's not just redeeming Aang, it's redeeming the Avatar in general. But he made the mistake. Roku made the mistake, Aang made the mistake, and he fixes it. He saves the world like what his destiny is. He saves the world, doesn't do it through violence. He does it instead by taking away Ozai's bending, and he redeems himself. And Zuko, he gets redeemed for, being part of the Fire Nation, not, being the best kind of guy, trying to, capture the Avatar, doing bad stuff like that. And he redeems himself by helping the Avatar defeat his father, helping the Avatar stop the 100-Year War by teaching the Avatar firebending and allowing him to become a fully realized Avatar. And I just think that's so cool. It's a story of redemption for both characters. So, and I think I wouldn't have gotten that as much growing up as a kid. I probably wouldn't have gotten that as much, but now I get to see, I get to really experience this redemptive story. Of course, for some lighthearted stuff, the show has a lot of humor, which I thought was very on point. I thought that it was good. I think that every single joke landed. I think there was very rarely a joke that was made that I didn't laugh at. It balances the humor well, the action well, the serious moments well, the serious themes. And I've said this before, but that's what makes this a good kids show, is it's not just a kids show. And with that said, the journey's over. I can officially say that I've watched Avatar The Last Airbender, and I think that that's great. It's always been something that I've wanted to watch, and I can finally say that I watched it. So, check that off the list. On to Legend of Korra. Actually, like I've said, I've already seen the first 2 seasons. Very much enjoying it. But that's for another video. So, until then, comment below your thoughts on the video and if Avatar The Last Airbender or anything else you just want to say. Comment it below. And remember to like, subscribe, check out some of our other videos. And with that said, that's a wrap.